heart of our cities to the edges of the land. We build a brighter future with a helping hand, lifting every neighbor. We hear the call. Together we rise, together we stand tall. IAM of America, united and strong, breaking down the barriers where we all belong, building homes and hope, hand in hand we'll strive.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're heading down to Spartanburg, South Carolina, for a project called IAM of Spartanburg.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, we got a ton of documents on this one.
Yeah, looks like we've got architectural plans, investment proposals, all kinds of market analysis stuff.
Even some details about the tech they're going to be using.
It's going to be a lot to unpack.
It is, which is why we're here.
Well, what really stands out to me at first glance is how IAM of Spartanburg is going about this whole affordable housing issue.
Yeah.
Especially for people with disabilities and seniors.
Yeah, they're not just building apartments, are they?
No, they're trying to build like a community.
Right.
With all the support services right there.
So before we get too far into the weeds here, can you just give us like a mental picture of what this place is going to look like?
So picture a 5-story building with studios, 1-bedrooms, even some 3-bedroom apartments.
Nice and mix.
Yeah, and there's a sub-level for parking.
Okay.
But above ground, it's over 55,000 square feet.
Wow. So it's not just like a big apartment building.
No, it's not just housing.
What else is going on in there?
So they're setting aside space for retail, an adult daycare facility, a healthcare facility, even dining areas and office spaces.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a true mixed-use development.
Yeah, and I noticed this too. They're going for LEED Platinum certification.
Oh, yeah.
Which means they're going to have to incorporate a bunch of sustainable features.
Yeah, things like solar panels, energy-efficient heating and cooling, even some fancy new lighting systems from Hubble.
Power Hub,
yeah.
It's not just a badge of honor, this LEED Platinum thing.
No.
You know, this is a smart move that could attract investors who are looking for sustainable projects.
Absolutely.
Lower operating costs. You might even be able to charge higher rents.
Oh, good points.
So LEED Platinum is pretty comprehensive.
It is.
It shows a real commitment to sustainable building.
Yeah.
And investors like that.
They do.
They see the value in that, both financially and socially. So let's talk about the people behind all this. Who is driving this vision, and what problem are they trying to solve?
So the developer is Reinvest America Corporation.
Okay.
RAC.
IAC, got it.
And they specialize in opportunity zone investments.
Okay.
And they're partnering with a couple of nonprofits.
Oh, great.
Reinvest Carolina, Inc. and Anointed Connect Church, Inc.
So you mentioned opportunity zones.
Yes.
I think a lot of our listeners probably know what those are.
Right.
But for those who don't, can you just give us a quick rundown?
Sure. So basically, they were created by the federal government as a way to encourage investment in low-income communities.
Right.
So investors get some pretty big tax breaks if they put their money into projects in these designated zones.
So it's kind of a win-win, right?
Yep.
Investors get a financial incentive, and the communities get the investment they need.
That's the idea.
And IAM of Spartanburg is really going all in on this opportunity zone thing.
Yeah, they're really promoting the benefits to investors.
Like what?
Like being able to defer taxes on capital gains, a step up in basis, which can reduce their tax burden down the road. And this is the big one, potentially excluding some of their gains from taxes altogether after 10 years.
So that's a pretty sweet deal for investors.
It is.
But how does that translate to actually addressing this affordable housing need in Spartanburg?
Remember those documents you sent?
Yeah.
The Spartanburg Housing Stability Profile?
I do.
It really paints a stark picture of the housing situation.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
It's a crisis, and not just in Spartanburg.
Right.
This is a nationwide issue.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
There's just not enough affordable housing.
Especially for those vulnerable populations.
Especially for people with disabilities and fixed incomes.
This project is going right at that.
It is.
Not just with housing, but with that whole network of support services.
Right. On site.
So it's more than just putting a roof over people's heads.
Much more.
So give us some specifics on those support services.
So they're planning to have a clinic right there in the building. They're going to offer telehealth services.
Great.
And they're even setting up partnerships with local hospitals.
Wow, so healthcare right there.
Right there.
That's
It's huge.
And for transportation, they're partnering with this company called Trek World USA.
Interesting.
And they use technology to provide non-emergency medical transportation.
So like Uber for doctor's appointments.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's all about making it easier for people to get the care they need.
And especially when it's all right there where they live.
It's all connected.
That's great. But can we dig a little deeper into that clinic model?
Sure.
How's that going to work in practice?
Cool.
Will residents have their own doctors?
So that part's not totally clear from the documents.
Okay.
We know they're aiming for comprehensive care, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
They get it. They understand that access to health care is key for these residents
Right.
if they want to be independent and live full lives.
Yeah, that's great to see.
It speaks to their overall vision,
It does. This isn't just about housing. It's about creating a foundation for a real community.
That's exciting. And it looks like they've thought about the financial side of things, too.
They have.
They're not just relying on rent to keep this whole thing going.
Right.
So how are they planning to make it all financially sustainable?
They've got a pretty detailed revenue model
Okay.
with multiple streams of income.
Okay. So not just the rent from the apartments.
No, they're also factoring in the commercial leases for those retail and office spaces.
Oh, so it's a mix of residential and commercial.
Exactly.
Can you give us some numbers? What kind of revenue are we talking about here?
Sure. So their projections are actually pretty transparent.
Okay, good.
They're estimating somewhere between $450,000 and $600,000 annually from the apartments.
Okay.
And on the commercial side, they're hoping to bring in about $300,000 per year.
So that's a decent chunk of change right there.
It is.
But are there any other revenue streams they're looking at?
Oh, yeah, they're not stopping.
They're
They
what?
Things like parking fees, EV charging stations, even a dry cleaning service they're considering.
Wow. So they're really thinking outside the box.
They are.
But having all those different revenue streams can get complicated, right?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a challenge.
How are they going to manage all that and make sure it all contributes to the long-term financial health of the project?
Well, it takes careful budgeting,
Yeah,
meticulous tracking, and you've got to be able to adapt to changes in the market.
that makes sense.
But I think this team gets it.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of experience on board. Experienced developers, investors, community leaders.
That's great.
People who really care about making this project a success.
That's what you want.
Exactly.
Now, I'm curious about the CEO of Reinvest America Corporation.
Yeah.
He seems to have a lot of experience in both real estate and social impact investing.
He does.
What do we know about him?
Well, his track record suggests he really understands both sides of the equation.
Okay.
The financial side and the social side. And he's been pretty vocal about aligning investments with positive outcomes for the community.
That's inspiring.
It is.
It's good to see someone putting their money where their mouth is.
Absolutely.
Have you gotten a chance to talk to him about this project?
I haven't spoken to him directly,
Okay.
but the documents do highlight some potential challenges.
Oh, what kind of challenges?
Well, they acknowledge that cost overruns are always a possibility.
Yeah.
Of course, especially with a project this big.
Sure, and construction delays.
Of course.
That's always a risk.
And they're also reliant on getting those HUD grants and other funding sources.
Yeah.
And that process can be tough.
Very competitive.
It is.
It sounds like they're going into this with their eyes wide open, though.
They are.
They know the risks.
They do. They've built contingencies into their budget and timeline
Okay.
to account for those potential setbacks. And they're committed to transparency throughout the process.
Well, that's always a good sign.
It is.
In fact, they've laid out a very specific construction roadmap
Oh, that's great.
with target dates for each phase of the project.
Can you walk us through some of those key milestones?
Sure.
I'm sure our listeners are curious about the timeline.
Absolutely. So first things first, they need to lock in the rest of the funding.
Okay.
They're aiming to have that done by August of next year,
August 2025.
August 2025.
But then what?
Then they can move full steam ahead with pre-construction.
Okay.
Finalizing those architectural plans, getting all the permits, pulling together the construction team.
So a lot of prep work.
Lots of prep work.
But if they hit that August 2025 funding target, when do they actually break ground?
If all goes according to plan, October 2025.
Wow, so just a couple months later?
That's the plan.
And then what?
And then it's a carefully choreographed dance of construction milestones.
Like what?
Target completion dates for the building superstructure, the interior build-out, installing all those green technologies we talked about.
So they've really mapped it all out.
It's pretty impressive.
It is.
And it's great to see how they're weaving those principles of sustainability and accessibility into every aspect of this project.
It's all connected.
It is. Speaking of sustainability, we talked about LEED Platinum earlier.
Right.
But how are they planning to measure the overall environmental impact of this building?
Good question.
Are they looking beyond just that certification?
They are.
Okay.
So the LED certification is a great benchmark,
Yeah.
but they're also committed to ongoing monitoring and assessment.
So what does that look like?
They'll be tracking things like energy and water consumption,
Okay.
waste reduction, even the building's carbon footprint.
That's great.
All that data will help them identify areas where they can improve and make sure they're actually meeting their sustainability goals.
So it's a long-term commitment.
It is.
It's not just about checking boxes.
Right.
It's about making a real difference.
Right. Exactly. They want to create a project that's good for the environment, good for the bottom line, and most importantly, good for the people who live there.
Now, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to step back and consider the bigger picture here.
Okay.
What does the success of IAM of Spartanburg mean for the future of affordable housing?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
If they can pull this off,
Yeah.
if they can show that this model works, that it's not only financially viable, but actually creates a thriving community,
Yeah.
it could have a ripple effect across the country.
That's what we're hoping for.
It could inspire other developers and investors to rethink how we approach this whole issue.
It's about showing that doing good and doing well financially don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
And it also highlights the potential of those opportunity zones we talked about.
It does.
If more developers and investors can see the value in using this program to create a positive social impact,
Right.
it could be a really powerful tool
Absolutely.
for revitalizing communities.
Agreed.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Right.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing, technology.
Okay.
From the Trek World USA partnership to those smart building features, it seems like technology is playing a pretty big role in this project.
It is, and I think that's a trend that's only going to continue.
Yeah.
As technology keeps evolving, it's going to play an even bigger role in how we design, build, and manage affordable housing.
And not just affordable housing.
No,
I think it has the potential to transform the entire real estate industry.
absolutely.
We're already seeing smart homes and smart buildings becoming more and more common.
We are. It's an exciting time to be in this field.
What are your thoughts on that?
There's so much innovation happening.
Yeah.
And the potential impact is huge.
Yeah.
We're seeing technologies that can make buildings more energy efficient, create healthier living environments, even improve accessibility for people with disabilities.
That's what it's all about, right?
It is.
Using technology to make things better for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The vision, the financing, the design, the technology behind the transportation.
It's been a good overview.
But I think it's time to zero in on one of the most important aspects of this whole thing.
Okay.
How will they measure the success of this project?
That's where those key performance indicators come.
The APIs.
Sophisticated
APIs, exactly.
We have a whole list of them right here in these documents,
Well, we do.
broken down into categories like leasing, revenue generation, investment acquisition, operational efficiency.
It's like a dashboard for the project.
Exactly. It helps them track their progress, make sure they're hitting their targets, and staying true to their mission.
Precisely.
What are some of the specific metrics that stand out to you?
Well, they've definitely set some ambitious goals.
Like what?
For example, under leasing, they're aiming for 90% occupancy of those residential units within 6 months of finishing construction.
Okay.
And for the commercial spaces, they want to be at 100% occupancy within the first year. Wow, those are some pretty lofty targets.
They are.
But it sounds like their market analysis suggests that it's doable.
It does. They've done their homework.
That's good to hear.
And they're not just focused on filling those spaces.
Right.
They're also tracking things like tenant satisfaction and retention rates.
So it's not just about getting people in the door,
No, it's about creating a place where people want to stay.
where they feel happy and supported.
Exactly. They want to build a real community.
So what about the financial side of things? How are they measuring their return on investment?
Well, they're tracking all the standard metrics you'd expect.
Okay.
Net operating income return on investment, debt service coverage ratio.
Right, those are all essential for any real estate development.
They are.
But in this case, they take on even more importance because they want to show that you can do good and do well financially at the same time.
Exactly. They're setting a precedent for others to follow.
And let's not forget about those impact metrics we discussed earlier.
Good point.
They're tracking things like the number of residents served, the types of services they provide, and the building's environmental impact.
Those are all important for demonstrating the project's social and environmental value.
And they want to be able to quantify that positive change they're creating in the community.
Right. They're not just doing this for warm, fuzzy feelings.
It's impressive how much thought they've put into this.
It is.
They've created a whole system for measuring their success.
And they're not just tracking these metrics in isolation.
Oh, so what are they doing?
They're using the data to inform their decision-making.
So it's an ongoing process.
It is a continuous cycle of learning and improvement.
That's impressive.
That's what sets this project apart.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-off development.
Right.
It's a living, breathing experiment in how to create a more just and equitable society.
Well said. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the IAM of Spartanburg project,
Okay.
I think it's important to acknowledge that this is just the beginning of the story.
It is.
The real measure of success will be seen in the lives of the people who call this place home.
Absolutely.
Will it provide the support and opportunities they need to thrive?
Right. Will it create that sense of community and belonging?
Those are the questions that really matter.
Only time will tell.
Yeah.
But based on everything we've learned so far,
Mm-hmm.
I'm optimistic.
Me too.
This project has all the right ingredients.
Like what?
A visionary team, a solid plan, a deep commitment to making a difference.
Yeah. And it's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
We do, whether it's supporting projects like this one,
Yeah.
advocating for policy changes.
Or even just educating ourselves about the issues.
Absolutely.
We can all contribute to building a future where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential.
Well said.
Now, for our listeners, I want to leave you with a question to think about.
Yeah.
We've seen how the IAM of Spartanburg project is addressing the specific needs of their community. But how can we apply these principles of inclusivity, sustainability, and innovation to the challenges facing our own communities?
What steps can we take?
Yeah, what steps can we take to create housing solutions that are not only affordable, but also supportive and empowering?
Good question.
Think critically about the role that development can play
Yeah.
in creating a more equitable and just society.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it as informative and inspiring as we did.
Me too.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep pushing for positive change.
Could have said it better myself. It really does. And this commitment to community extends to their financial planning, too. They're not just relying on rental income to keep this project afloat.
Well, that's interesting. So how are they planning to make this whole thing financially sustainable?
They've laid out a really detailed revenue model with multiple streams of income.
So obviously there's the residential leases.
Yeah.
But what else?
They're also factoring in the commercial leases for those retail and office spaces we talked about.
Also, it's a mix of residential and commercial revenue.
Exactly.
What kind of numbers are we talking about here?
Their projections are pretty transparent.
Oh.
They're estimating that the residential income will be somewhere between $450,000 and $600,000 annually.
Okay.
And on the commercial side, they're hoping to bring in around $300,000 a year.
That sounds pretty solid.
It's a good start.
Are there any other revenue streams they're exploring?
Oh, yeah, they're not stopping there.
Like what?
They've also factored in potential income from things like parking fees, EV charging stations, even a dry cleaning service they're considering.
Wow, they really are thinking outside the box.
They are.
But, having all those different revenue streams, that can add a lot of complexity, right?
Yeah, it can be a challenge for sure.
How are they going to manage all those different income sources and make sure they all contribute to the project's long-term financial health?
You're right. Juggling multiple revenue streams can be tricky. It requires careful budgeting, meticulous tracking, and the ability to adapt to changing market conditions.
Right.
But I think this team has a strong understanding of the complexities involved.
Yeah.
They've put together a group of experienced developers, seasoned investors, and community leaders who are all on board with this project.
They all want to see it succeed.
They do.
Now, speaking of the team, I'm curious about the CEO of Reinvest America Corporation.
Okay.
He seems to have a pretty impressive background in both real estate and social impact investing.
His track record definitely suggests a deep understanding of both the financial and social aspects of development.
Yeah, he's been pretty vocal about the importance of making sure investments actually benefit the community.
He has. It's refreshing to see someone who walks the walk,
Given his experience, I'm curious, have you had a chance to pick his brain about the potential challenges facing a project of this scale?
I haven't spoken with him directly,
Okay.
but the documents do highlight a few potential risks.
Okay, like what?
Well, they acknowledge that cost overruns and construction delays are always a possibility,
Yeah, of course.
especially with a project this ambitious.
Right.
And of course, they're relying on securing those HUD grants and other funding sources.
Yeah.
And that process can be quite competitive.
So there are some hurdles to overcome.
There are, but it seems like they're going into this with a clear understanding of the challenges.
Okay.
They've built contingencies into their budget and timeline to account for potential setbacks.
That's smart.
And they're committed to transparency throughout the process.
Always a good sign.
In fact, they've outlined a very specific construction roadmap with target dates for each phase of the project.
Oh, that's great. Can you walk us through some of those key milestones?
Sure.
I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear about the timeline.
Absolutely. So first things first, they need to secure the remaining funding.
Okay.
They're aiming to have that piece in place by August of next year.
So August 2025.
August 2025, that's the target.
And then what?
Once that's done, they can move full steam ahead with the pre-construction phase,
Okay.
which includes finalizing those architectural plans, obtaining all the necessary permits, and assembling the construction team.
So a lot of behind-the-scenes work.
A lot of prep work, but it's crucial to lay a solid foundation.
And assuming they hit that August 2025 funding target, when do they actually break ground?
If all goes according to plan, they'll break ground in October 2025.
Wow. So just a couple months later.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
From there, it's a carefully choreographed dance of construction milestones.
Give us some examples.
They've got target completion dates for the building's superstructure, the interior build-out, and the installation of all those green technologies we discussed earlier.
So they've really thought this through.
They have. They've broken the project down into manageable phases.
It's impressive.
It's a testament to their planning and organization.
And it's great to see how they're weaving those principles of sustainability and accessibility into every step of the process.
It's all
Speaking of sustainability,
Yeah.
I know we talked about lead platinum earlier,
Right.
but how are they planning to measure the overall environmental impact of the building once it's up and running?
That's a great question. And while the LEED certification is a significant benchmark, they're not stopping there.
Okay.
They're committed to ongoing monitoring and assessment.
So what does that look like in practice?
They'll be tracking things like energy and water consumption, waste reduction, and even the building's carbon footprint.
So they'll have data to back up their claims.
Exactly. And that data will help them identify areas for improvement and ensure they're meeting their sustainability goals.
So it's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing commitment.
It is. They're in it for the long haul.
It's reassuring to know they're taking such a comprehensive approach.
It's a sign that they're serious about making a real difference.
They're not just checking boxes.
Right. They're committed to creating a project that is an environmentally responsible, financially sound, and most importantly, a place where people can thrive.
Now, as we move into the final stages of this deep dive, I think it's important to step back and consider the broader implications of this project.
Okay.
What does the success of IAM of Spartanburg mean for the future of affordable housing development?
That's the question everyone's asking.
Right. If they can demonstrate that this model is not only financially viable, but also creates a thriving community, it could have a ripple effect across the country.
It could.
It could inspire other developers and investors to rethink how we approach affordable housing.
Absolutely. It could change the game.
It's about proving that doing good and doing well financially are not mutually exclusive.
Exactly. It's about showing that investing in affordable housing can be both a smart business decision and a way to make a real difference in people's lives.
And it highlights the potential of those opportunity zones we talked about earlier.
It does.
If more developers and investors see the value in using this program to create positive social impact, it could be a powerful tool for revitalizing communities all across the country.
It's a game changer.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Great.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more aspect: technology.
Okay.
From that Trek World USA partnership to those smart building features, it seems like technology is playing a significant role in this project.
It absolutely is. And I think that's a trend we're going to see more and more of in the coming years.
Yeah.
As technology continues to evolve, it's going to have an even bigger impact on how we design, build, and manage affordable housing.
And not just affordable housing.
No.
I think it has the potential to transform the entire real estate industry.
I agree. We're already seeing the beginnings of that, with smart homes and smart buildings becoming more common.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's an exciting time to be involved in this field. There's so much innovation happening, and the potential for positive change is enormous.
What kind of innovations are you most excited about?
Well, we're seeing technologies that can help us make buildings more energy efficient, create healthier living environments, and improve accessibility for people with disabilities.
It's all about using technology to make life better for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The vision, the financing, the design, even the tech behind the transportation.
It's been a comprehensive overview.
But now I think it's time to zoom in on one of the most crucial aspects of this project. How will they measure its success?
That's where those key performance indicators, or KPIs, come in.
KPIs, right? We've got a list of them right here in the documents.
We do.
And they're broken down into categories like leasing revenue generation, investment acquisition, and operational efficiency.
It's like a dashboard for tracking the project's progress.
Exactly. It helps them make sure they're hitting their targets, staying on budget, and ultimately achieving their mission.
Precisely.
What are some of the specific metrics that stand out to you?
Well, they've set some pretty ambitious goals.
For example?
For example, under leasing, they're aiming for 90% occupancy of the residential units within 6 months of the project's completion.
Wow, 90%. That's a high bar.
It is, and for the commercial spaces, they're shooting for 100% occupancy within the first year.
Even more ambitious?
They're not messing around.
But their market analysis seems to suggest that those targets are achievable.
It does. They've done their homework.
That's reassuring.
And it's not just about filling the spaces.
Right.
Also tracking things like tenant satisfaction and retention rates.
So they want to make sure people are happy living and working there.
Exactly. They want to create a place where people want to stay, not just a place where they have to stay.
And how about the financial side of things? How are they measuring their return on investment?
They're tracking all the standard metrics you'd expect. Net operating income return on investment debt service coverage ratio.
Right. Those are all essential for any real estate development.
They are, but in this case, they take on added significance.
Why is that?
Because they want to demonstrate that investing in affordable housing can be both socially impactful and financially sustainable.
It's about setting an example for others to follow.
Exactly. They want to show the world that doing good and doing well can go hand in hand.
And let's not forget those impact metrics.
Good point.
The number of residents served, the types of services provided, the building's environmental impact.
Those are all crucial for demonstrating the project's social and environmental value.
They want to be able to quantify the positive change they're creating in the community.
Exactly, and they're committed to using that data to inform their decision-making.
So it's not a static plan. It's a living, breathing document that evolves as they learn and adapt.
Precisely, they're embracing the iterative process.
That's impressive.
It's a sign of a team that's committed to continuous improvement.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the IAM of Spartanburg project, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is just the beginning of the story.
It is the true measure of success will be seen in the lives of the people who call this place home.
Will it provide the support and opportunities they need to thrive? Will it foster a sense of community and belonging? Those are the questions that ultimately matter.
Those are the big questions, and only time will tell.
But based on everything we've learned so far,
Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
I am too. This project has all the makings of a success story.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's an inspiring example of what's possible when we combine vision, innovation, and a deep commitment to social impact.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
Whether it's supporting projects like this one, advocating for policy change, or simply educating ourselves about the issues.
We can all make a difference.
Well said. Now, for our listeners, I'd like to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
The IAM of Spartanburg project is addressing the specific needs of its community. But how can we apply these principles of inclusivity, sustainability, and innovation to the challenges facing our own communities?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves.
What steps can we take to create housing solutions that are not only affordable, but also supportive and empowering?
It's a challenge, but it's one worth taking on.
You know, as we've been going through all these documents, one thing that's really struck me is how much thought they've put into the long-term sustainability of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's a key point. A lot of times we see these projects that have their hearts in the right place, but they just don't have the financial foundation to really make a lasting impact.
Yeah, you got to be able to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
It looks like IAM of Spartanburg is taking a different approach.
I think so.
And it goes beyond just the money.
Right.
They're thinking about the social and environmental sustainability too.
It's all connected.
It's about creating a community that can thrive, you know.
Yeah, for generations to come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to do that, they need to have those systems in place.
Yeah.
to track their progress,
Right.
make adjustments when they need to, and prove that they're actually creating value.
That's where those KPIs come in.
Right, those key performance indicators, we touched on them briefly in the last segment.
We did.
But can you remind our listeners what KPIs are and why they're so important?
Sure. Think of KPIs as like a set of measurable goals
Okay.
that help an organization track how they're doing and make sure they're on the right path.
So it's not just about good intentions.
No, it's about putting some hard numbers to those goals.
Exactly. So what are some of the specific KPIs they've identified for IAM of Spartanburg?
Well, they've got them broken down into different categories.
Okay.
Like leasing revenue generation, investment acquisition, operational efficiency.
So they're really covering all their bases.
They are.
What are some examples?
Okay, so for leasing, one of their KPIs is to achieve a 90% occupancy rate for the residential units
Okay.
within 6 months of the project being finished.
90%, that's pretty ambitious.
It is, and for the commercial spaces, they want to hit 100% occupancy within the first year.
Wow, that's even tougher.
It is.
Yeah.
But their market research seems to suggest that it's doable.
So they've done their homework,
They have.
and it's good to hear.
And it's not just about filling those spaces.
Right.
They're also tracking things like tenant satisfaction and retention rates.
So they want to make sure people are happy,
They do.
that they want to stay there long term.
It's about building a real community, not just filling up a building.
And what about the financial side of things? How are they measuring their return on investment?
Well, they're using the standard metrics.
Okay.
Net operating income return on investment debt service coverage ratio.
Right, those are all important for any real estate project.
They are. But in this case, they take on even more significance
How so?
because they want to prove that you can invest in affordable housing and still make a solid return.
It's about changing the perception,
It is.
showing that it can be a smart business decision.
Exactly.
And let's not forget those impact metrics we talked about.
Right. The number of residents served, the types of services they provide, the building's environmental footprint.
Those are crucial for measuring the social and environmental impact of the project.
They want to be able to quantify the good they're doing in the community.
And it sounds like they're committed to using that data
Yeah.
to actually make decisions.
Right. If something isn't working, they're willing to adjust their approach.
So it's not a one and done kind of thing.
No, it's a continuous process of learning and improvement.
It's really impressive how much thought and planning they put into this whole thing.
It is.
Anything else that stands out to you in these documents?
You know, looking back over everything,
Yeah.
I'm just struck by the sheer ambition of this project.
Yeah, it's huge.
They're tackling some really complex issues.
Affordable housing, healthcare access, transportation, sustainability.
It's a lot to take on.
It is,
Huh.
but they seem to be doing it with a lot of intentionality.
They are. They've thought this through, and they're committed to making it work.
It gives me hope.
Me too. It's a reminder that even in the face of big challenges, we can still make a difference.
Well said. So for our listeners out there,
Yeah.
the IAM of Spartanburg project is a great example of what can happen when we combine vision innovation and a commitment to social impact.
It's inspiring.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play
We do.
in creating a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely.
Whether it's supporting projects like this one, advocating for policy change, or just educating ourselves about the issues.
We can all make a difference.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it as informative and inspiring as we did.
I did.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep pushing for positive change.
Couldn't have said it better myself.